I remember the day like it was yesterday. Not because of the shock or the betrayal, though those certainly burned themselves into my memory, but because it was the day I realized that family, the people you think you know, can be the cruelest strangers of all. That I am David. 61 years old, retired military, a widower, and someone who has prided himself on being a fair man, a patient man, a man who never raises his voice unless absolutely necessary. I thought I knew my son. I thought I knew his girlfriend. I thought I had some grasp on the rhythm of life in my family. How naive that was. It was a quiet Tuesday morning when it happened. I had taken my usual stroll around the neighborhood, my routine grounding me in a world that felt increasingly unpredictable. Returning home, I noticed the mailbox was unusually full. Bills, junk mail, a birthday card addressed to my son, Michael, nothing unusual there. But as I stepped inside, my phone rang. It was him, my son, Michael. I answered casually. "Hey, Dad," he said, his voice oddly clipped. "Hey, Mike. Everything all right?" I asked. We're married," he said. I paused, the phone frozen against my ear. "I'm sorry. We got married yesterday," he said, as though this were the most ordinary piece of news in the world. I blinked. I swear I could hear my own heartbeat thumping in my ears. "Yesterday?" I asked, incredulous. "You didn't tell me?" "Nope," he said. Then, almost casually, "Hope that's okay." That's when the voice of my daughter-in-law, Alicia, joined the call. She sounded chipper, happy, like she had just announced a trip to Disneyland. "Hi, Dad," she said. "Isn't it wonderful?" I wanted to scream. I wanted to break something. I wanted to find the nearest wall and punch it, but instead, I found myself sitting down heavily on the couch, gripping the phone like it was a lifeline. "Wonderful. Wonderful. You got married yesterday, and I didn't even know?" "Oh, come on, Dad," Alicia said. "It's just a little surprise. We wanted it intimate, private. You know, just us." "Yes," I said, my voice rising, "but you're talking about my son." "My son. I raised him. I guided him. And you didn't think to include me?" There was a pause. Then Michael muttered something incoherent, clearly uncomfortable with the storm he had just unleashed. Alicia, however, didn't back down. "You'll get over it," she said sweetly. "You always do." That, my friends, was the spark that lit the fuse. For a moment, I allowed myself to wallow in disbelief. But disbelief quickly turned to anger, and anger, as I learned long ago, is fuel for action. I realized, in that instant, that I couldn't let this go. Not because I wanted revenge for revenge's sake, but because boundaries had been crossed, and if I didn't act, I'd spend the rest of my life being walked over. I started by gathering information. I needed to understand how deep this deception ran. I talked to neighbors, mutual friends, anyone who might have seen something. Slowly, pieces began to fall into place. It wasn't just that they had eloped. They had done it without even considering the impact on me. They had kept it secret, laughing quietly while I remained blissfully unaware. And they were arrogant enough to assume that I would eventually forgive them, as if my feelings were optional, like an accessory that I decided to be strategic. I'm a man of patience, after all. I wasn't going to storm their home and make a scene. I wasn't going to throw a tantrum that would only give them the satisfaction of thinking they had gotten to me. No. I would let the situation unfold, but on my terms. I would take back control in a way they could never anticipate. The first step was subtle, psychological. I started planting seeds of doubt. During casual conversations, I asked questions about their marriage that weren't casual at all. "So, Alicia, I'd say, what made you two decide yesterday was the perfect day?" Must have been an interesting process, keeping it all secret. Her smile would falter ever so slightly. Michael would shift uncomfortably. Mission 1, I thought. Make them second-guess the security of their little secret. Then came the financial maneuvering. I had always been prudent with my money, saving not for extravagance but for control. It's not revenge if it doesn't hit where it matters, I reminded myself. Without revealing my intentions, I began acquiring assets that I knew they valued or wanted access to. I quietly consulted with lawyers, accountants, people who could make things legally binding without them realizing it until it was too late, but the most satisfying part was watching them squirm socially. I began casually dropping mentions of our family events in ways that implied they hadn't been invited. Mutual friends started asking them if they were attending gatherings they hadn't been informed of. Invitations never came because I never sent them. The whispers began. The looks. The questions. Little by little, their perfect little secret life started to crack under pressure. Michael and Alicia tried to confront me once. They came to my home, expecting me to be angry, expecting tears, expecting capitulation. Instead, I greeted them with a calm smile. "Good to see you," I said. "Come in." They were confused. They had anticipated a meltdown, but all I offered was serenity. That threw them off balance. You know we're married?" Michael stammered. "I do," I said, pouring tea with deliberate precision. "Congratulations, by the way. Really. I hope it works out for you. And you're not mad?" Alicia asked, frowning. "That I am not mad," I said. "I'm disappointed." They left that day thinking they had survived, thinking the storm had passed. Little did they know, that was just the beginning. That I escalated. It's amazing how powerful silence can be as a weapon. I stopped attending events they expected me at. I began speaking more at social gatherings, subtly highlighting family values and the importance of inclusion, making pointed remarks without ever directly accusing them. Everyone noticed. Everyone talked. Michael and Alicia felt isolated without understanding why. Next came the legal angle. Without revealing specifics, I initiated inquiries about estate planning, ownership rights, and family assets. I positioned myself in ways that would make any underhanded moves they had made more visible. The lawyers I worked with were discreet but efficient. Slowly, they realized that their marriage hadn't granted them immunity from consequences. They had thought secrecy was their shield, but it was actually a spotlight. By the time they fully understood the depth of my actions, the social and financial pressure had built to an unbearable crescendo. Friends and family, previously neutral, began asking questions. Why weren't we invited? Didn't David know? Why didn't he attend? Each question was a pinprick, each one a reminder that their arrogance had been costly. That I had one final act planned. It was bold, dramatic, and utterly satisfying. I invited the extended family for a brunch, knowing full well Michael and Alicia would not expect it. The table was set, the mood warm and welcoming. Just as the event reached its peak, I raised a toast. To family, I said. To honesty. And to remembering that secrets, no matter how small, have a way of coming to light. That I watched them squirm, watched their faces pale, watched the whispers ripple through the room. Then, casually, I added, I suppose some people prefer surprises. But surprises at the expense of love and trust are not really surprises at all. The room went silent. I had said nothing direct, nothing accusatory, yet everyone knew exactly what I meant. Michael's hands clenched into fists beneath the table. Alicia tried to smile, tried to deflect, but the tension was palpable. I, meanwhile, sat back, satisfied, calm. I had regained control without ever raising my voice. Without ever stooping to petty insults. I had proven, unequivocally, that their arrogance, their secrecy, their casual disregard for my role in my son's life, had consequences. Over the following weeks, their marriage, once a private fortress, began to show cracks. Mutual friends stopped bending over backward to accommodate them. Small lies and omissions started coming to light. They fought more openly, more visibly, more audibly. And I remained serene, untouchable, the eye of the storm. By the time the year ended, Michael and Alicia had learned a vital lesson. They had learned that family isn't just about convenience, secrecy, or ambition. Family is about respect, about honesty, about understanding that every action has consequences. And I had my revenge, not through anger, not through malice, but through strategy, patience, and control. The last time I saw them, they approached me cautiously, with that same uneasy politeness one shows to a powerful force they don't fully understand. Alicia muttered something about how they had made mistakes and Michael nodded repeatedly. I simply smiled. That I know, I said. But the important thing is, we learn. And we move forward, and with that, I left them to reflect. My revenge wasn't loud. It wasn't violent. It was methodical, invisible, and deeply satisfying. And most importantly, it reminded everyone, including my son and his wife, that some things, like respect, honesty, and trust, are never optional. I sipped my tea, feeling a quiet satisfaction I hadn't experienced in years. At 61, I had been tested, betrayed, and forced to act. And I had done so with dignity, with strategy, and with an understanding that true power lies in patience, observation, and the quiet execution of consequences. Family can be complicated. But when you've lived as long as I have, you realize that the most important thing isn't to punish, it's to reclaim your place, quietly, strategically, and with unwavering calm, and that, my friends, is exactly what I did.